and the state's school superintendent seem to be working there. Indiana is only one of 10 states ranked above average in a recent study on the readiness of students. So joining me now, Governor Mitch Daniels. Governor, let me start with the news of the week. We saw Arne Duncan come out, Secretary of Education, offer up this waiver program because it looks like No Child Left Behind, a revamped version of it, isn't going to get through this Congress anytime soon. What are some of the waivers you're going to be asking for?
First, let me thank Secretary Duncan. I think he's doing exactly the right thing here, Chuck. Ideally, Congress would have gotten organized to make the necessary modifications, but in the absence of that, I think it's right for the department to act. And we're most interested in the flexibility to measure the growth of students, not simply their absolute levels. Take into account that the teacher or the school does not control the level at which kids enter school. And what we're doing in Indiana is measuring and then holding schools and accountable, rewarding those teachers who help a child grow at least a year for every year in the classroom. And that's the single most important thing, that change that we could ask for, and the Secretary, to his credit, is going to provide it.
You know, it's interesting, Governor, you were in the Bush administration when No Child Left Behind was created. It was a bipartisan effort between Ted Kennedy, the president, John Boehner involved in that. And when the law was written at the time, what wasn't foreseen, and now that you're on the state side of things, what wasn't foreseen at the time when they wrote the law that has made it, frankly, so controversial to so many state governors, regardless of party?
First, I'd say the law gets more grief than it deserves. We needed accountability in education. We came off decades in which the education establishment said, just shovel in some more money and shut up. And national policy finally said, no, we want to see every child have a chance to succeed in life. We're tired of minority kids and others being hidden, their failure being hidden in the averages. So the general idea of No Child Left Behind deserved the bipartisan support that it had, but it was a pretty clumsy implement, as was quickly learned. And I'll go back to the point I made earlier. It isn't fair, really, to hold a teacher or a school accountable for a child who might have arrived at school with very, very far behind. It may be impossible for that kid to pass a test that's really meant for those students who are succeeding, but it is fair to see whether that teacher, that principal, that school district is helping the child grow and catch up over time. And that's the kind of new flexibility that Secretary Duncan's now going to apparently afford us.
What is the federal accountability that should be there? I mean, that's what I think has been the sort of the push and pull over decades in this fight between local control of schools, but at the same time you want some sort of national standards of some sort that make students competitive globally.
I think this is another example, Chuck, a great one, of where we're all learning together and making improvements. So the idea of the federal government setting national standards would be a terrible one, but the states have not waited on Washington, really. They have acted together, almost every state now part of a program to draw up among us some standards, so we're all jumping over the same bar. We know how our kids rank compared to kids elsewhere, but it's not controlled from Washington. I think that's another good example of how we're learning, finally, to implant some accountability into public education without forfeiting local control.
You know, I can't help myself. Got to ask you a couple political questions. Number one, what do you think of the field with Rick Perry as a member of the Republican presidential field that you're not a member of, and I know a lot of people wanted you to be? What do you think of the field now? Is it complete in your mind?
I don't know. Obviously, Rick didn't think it was. Maybe there'll be a few others. And I think the more the merrier. I think it's got some really good people in it, people of the character and skill set to be president. And you know, my one hope is that the Republican field will speak the language of unity, will explain to every American we are in this together. We have a mathematical problem with the debt, and we have a transcendent problem to get this economy growing at a much faster rate. And whatever your politics, and whatever your status, your situation in life, you have a stake in that. So let's come together and take those actions that will be effective at a faster growing American economy that therefore can pay the debts we've piled up.
We have heard governors have been sitting on the sidelines waiting to, Republican governors, waiting to rally around somebody. A bunch of them were ready to rally around you or potentially Haley Barbour. Both you and Governor Barbour decided not to run. Do you expect these governors, a lot of governors, to rally around Rick Perry?
Not sure. I mean, I think it all depends on what Governor Perry or other candidates have to say. You know, governors as a species, we're pretty action-oriented. We're pretty practical. You have to be in one of these jobs, and whatever candidate, whether they're we've got some other former governors in the field who could be contenders, I think, to attract and excite people like me and my colleagues.
And do you plan on endorsing before the primaries end, or are you going to stay out of this?
Well, first, I don't know who'd care much, you know, what I thought, but I'm just waiting and seeing. As I said, there are a lot of good people out there. A lot of them I could easily imagine supporting enthusiastically. That's not in question. What I want to hear is what they have to say, how clearly and boldly and positively they're ready to say to America the kind of things I suggested a minute ago.
No regrets?
I'm pretty busy at a job I care a lot about. I got 18 months to try to make Indiana schools even a lot better than they are now, and that'll keep me busy.
So no second thoughts, huh?
No, sir.
Okay. Governor Mitch Daniels, thanks for coming on this morning, talking education and a little politics. Appreciate it.